Hey guys, happy Wednesday. I'm so excited to be with you guys today. And today we are going to be talking about the dreaded stretch fabric. So, I know a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with stretchy fabrics, and even some people have a hate-hate relationship with stretchy fabrics. But if you're sewing, let's face it, sooner or later you're going to have to deal with some kind of stretchy fabric. Maybe it's just hemming a shirt or repairing a shirt that you own that is stretchy. But sometimes the hardest thing to do with stretchy fabric is when you try to sew it and it kind of just like stretches itself out while it's stitching. Or you know how sometimes you sew your stretchy fabric and it kind of gets pushed down into the little hole where your needle goes into, and then it all gets stuck. So, those are the two biggest pain points that people come across with stretchy fabric. And I'm going to show you an easy, awesome way to avoid those. And you're gonna be like, "What the heck? Why did I not know this?" So, what you're gonna need is a piece of scratch paper. I usually like to use printer paper because it's a bit thicker than like lined paper. But if lined paper is what you have, that'll work. If you're even just doing a little piece and you have like a sticky note or something, anything that's kind of some stiff-ish paper. You don't want cardstock, that's a little too thick, but just like a printer paper or lined paper. Okay, let's move over to the sewing machine and I'm gonna show you guys how to do this. I know it sounds really crazy, but it's amazing. Now, sometimes I will cut this up into little strips. Let me get this aimed down here. So, like, for instance, if I'm sewing along a hem, I won't use this giant piece of paper. I'll cut a strip. So, here's my little strip that I just cut. And what we're going to do is use it as a stabilizer. And basically, we're going to put it through the sewing machine underneath our fabric. So let's just pretend I need to sew a straight stitch along this fabric. I'm going to put the paper underneath the fabric and then put it into the sewing machine. Then we're going to put our presser foot down and just start sewing. What this is going to do is this, since the paper doesn't stretch, it's going to keep the presser foot and feed dogs from stretching the fabric from the underside. That's what normally happens when this gets all stretchy when you sew it. The other thing that it does is it creates a barrier between the fabric and this hole where your needle goes down into, where usually you get, this stretchy stuff stuck in. So this is going to make all of our lives so much easier. So I'm going to hold on to my threads here and just start sewing. Okay, you can see I basically got no stretch here, so that's nice. And it sewed all the way through. But you're probably wondering, what the heck do we do now? I don't want a piece of paper flopping around on the back of my fabric. Well, usually I just rip it off. So the thread should be stronger than your paper, so it should just rip right through. You can see here where the stitch line kind of broke. Well, I mean the stitches didn't break, but the paper ripped along the stitch line. That's what we want. So this comes all the way off, and then here we have our stretchy seam. Now, if you use a little bit too thick of paper, this won't rip off as easy. But if that's all you have, what you can do is go to the sink or something and just run water over it and the paper will dissolve right off. So now we have a nice little stitch line. Now, if you try to do this with too thick of paper, like I mentioned, you won't like yourself because it will get stuck there. It won't be able to rip off. You can use scissors and cut really close to the thread line if you want. Or, like I mentioned, just go run it under some water. It'll get soggy and you should be able to pull it apart. But my advice is to test this a little bit on a little scrap of fabric, kind of like what you just saw me do for whatever kind of fabric is giving you fits. And then you can see which kind of paper that you have is working really well. If you have a lighter fabric, then a less heavy or less thick paper will work best. If you have a heavier fabric, then a heavier paper will work best. You know how some kinds of stretch fabrics are really light and some are pretty heavy. So, one last thing to mention as I've got you here, the place where I have found this tip the absolute most helpful is when hemming the modern stretch type of bridesmaid or formal dress. So, if you have any friends that ask you to do that, or maybe you do sewing for some side money, and you have people who have bridesmaids dresses that they want hemmed, and you turn away all the ones with the stretchy hems because they're a pain in the butt, this tip is for you. You can use this paper and it will make your life so much easier and you will not hate hemming that kind of stretchy fabric anymore. Okay, guys, so that was a quick live video today, but I hope you learned something. If you have any other tips to share with me or any of the other club members watching this, go ahead and comment below with your tips on how to sew stretchy fabric without pulling your hair out. Okay, guys, I'm curious to read all the tips below, so make sure to comment those. I will see you guys next week, as always, on Wednesday for a live video. And remember that you can always watch these replays, so you don't have to show up live. But hey, love it when you do. All right, guys, bye. Have a good rest of the week.